welcome back to the channel. This is Naomi Thierry Salgado. Today we're going to take a break from our usual urban life series, and I just thought it would be fun to make a video about how to paint, how to use oil paints for, maybe this is your first time. Maybe you got oil paints for Christmas. Maybe you've had them in the closet for a while, and now over Christmas vacation you have some time and want to just get them out and play around. So I came up with a little project that we could do together. I can show you the process of just starting from scratch, what you need as bare basics to create an oil painting. And I came up with this very basic, very simple project that you could create. You can do this with any shape or size of canvas that you have. Just sky, background, foreground, tree, and then you can take it any which way you want, whether your canvas is square or rectangular, up or down, it doesn't matter. It's a tree in a landscape. So after I made this video, I realized that it's too long, so I broke it into 3 parts. This is part 1, and we'll be talking about what you'll need to get started and how to start your painting. First, let's talk about paints. What I would recommend would be alizarin crimson or a similar red that points towards purple, and then a red that points towards orange, which this one's cadmium red light, cadmium yellow medium. This will also a yellow that points towards orange. Here's a lemon yellow that points towards green. This is cerulean blue. This points towards green also. This is French ultramarine blue. This will point more towards purple. Then I like to have some kind of neutral color, like earthen color. This is burnt sienna. To me, that's very helpful. And then white. You don't need a black, you don't need a green or purple or anything. You can mix your own from there, and your painting will be more lively because it will have its own greens, and they'll be unique. And so anyway, this would be what I consider bare minimum. However, you can get even further minimum, and you could take out either one of the reds, either one of the yellows, and either one of the blues. I personally prefer that. And if you have a very stripped down set, you can absolutely paint anything you want using those 4 colors. So the next thing you'll need is something to put the paint on the canvas. You, at a bare minimum, I would recommend 2 brushes, something like this. This is hog's hair bristle brush that just shed on me. This is an old one of mine, but still works great. And this is like a medium size. I have them from massive giant ones down to very small ones. But you don't want to get too small. That's a very beginner mistake. You want to stay as large as possible. So I wouldn't go any smaller than that for your big brush. But again, I have nice, very big ones. Let me show you. That is a nice brush. Then you'll probably want a small one, but be careful to use this at the end. Don't use it right away unless you're just sketching in. Then switch right away to your big one so that you can stay nice and loose. Alternatively, if you don't have a brush or want to use a brush, you can paint with a knife. I like to paint with a knife. And this is a palette knife. You can mix paint with it, and you can put it on the canvas if you want. You don't need a palette knife. You can mix your paints with a brush, and you don't need a brush. You can apply your paints with a palette knife. But if you happen to have both, then traditionally, this palette knife is for mixing paint. These brushes are for applying paint. Next, you'll need something for cleaning your tools. So absolutely, you're going to need some paper towel or a rag or something like that to get the paint off. If you're using a palette knife only, this just wipes your palette knife clean and you're ready to go. if you're using a brush, you can wipe the brushes off on here and that might be good enough. However, if you want to actually clean the brushes and get the paint out of the bristles, you will want some kind of solvent. This is Gamsol. It's made by Gamblin, and it is an odorless mineral spirits, highly refined to take out the very strong smelling agents of typical solvents from historical painting. In the old days, if a bunch of oil painters were together inside, it would smell pretty bad. It wouldn't take very long before it got really stinky in there, in the studio. Once we've switched to this, it's safer. I won't say completely safe because you can become sensitive to any solvent, even this one. Gamblin has also developed a line of solvent-free cleaning using only oils, and I recommend that too. You don't want to get the cleaning oils into your mediums, into your paint, so you need to make sure that comes back out before you paint with that brush again. So you want a container to put your Gamsol in because you don't want to dirty this. This should stay clean. I know it looks dirty, but that's just the outside. The inside has clean solvent in it. So you want to get yourself a little jar or container or something like that. Maybe a jelly jar would work good to put your solvent into. So you pour a little of this into your container, and every time you need to clean your brush, first wipe it off on paper towel, otherwise this will get really gunky pretty fast. So wipe it off on paper towel, then swish in there, and then wipe again, and then you can switch colors with your brush. So you'll also need something to mix your paints on, a palette of some kind. So this is just a cute little one someone gave to me, but you don't need this fancy like wood, cliche one. You can use a styrofoam plate or a paper plate or a piece of glass. You can use any piece of wood really, and if you're using raw wood, you maybe want to oil it first with, I was going to say with some linseed oil, but maybe you don't have that. I'm not telling you this because you absolutely need it, but another thing an artist might need would be either linseed oil, can you read that? Refined linseed oil, or here's a different one, stand oil. These ones are made by Gamblin, but you can get it from other places. But you can mix that into your paint because paint is actually just powdered coloring, powdered pigment mixed with linseed oil. There's a few other things mixed into it, binder, or linseed oil is the binder, but like drying agents and things like that. But it's basically oil mixed with powder is all that oil paint is. So you can thin it down using more oil, and that makes it more spreadable on the canvas. If you're using a brush to apply it, you might really enjoy putting a little bit of linseed oil, and I tend to mix 50-50 Gamsol, 50-50 linseed oil. And that's what this little jar has in it, although I've been experimenting with a new recipe, which is 5 parts of Gamsol and 1 part of stand oil, which is a very thick, syrupy version of linseed oil. So, yeah, those are the things that you'll need. Okay, another thing you might want, but it's not necessary, is an easel to hold your canvas upright. You can also paint, just put something to protect your table and just lay it down. So I don't consider that like an absolute must-have. So there are several ways to actually start an oil painting. You can put a whole layer of color over the top, all one color. You can leave the white underneath and just put only that layer of color over the top and glaze it on thinly, transparent, and that way the light is going to go right through the paint, hit the white canvas, and bounce back. And so now you'll see it brighter than it maybe would otherwise be. But let's say you're trying to do a red stoplight, and you do the whole thing yellow, and then you put your red dot of red. Now the light has to go through the red, through the yellow, and back to your eyes, and that is where it gets dull, and it gets bogged down in all those different layers of color. So take a look at what you want to paint and decide, do you want to leave it white, or do you want to get an all over base color? Some base colors I tend to use the most are yellows and also burnt sienna. That burnt sienna I was showing you, burnt sienna tends to be the one I do the most because it is very natural looking. Even in the sky, that orangey color, it's the color of the dust that settles right in the sky along the horizon when you thin it out with a lot of white and blue. And it naturally neutralizes blue. So if your sky colors tend to get like garish, this will naturally cut them back to being more natural looking in the sky. And of course it's the color of red earth, so so it looks good in the earth too. So if I'm doing a landscape, chances are I will start by a wash of burnt sienna. So I'm going to do that right now and show you what that looks like. So this is the palette I built for myself. This is my little pile of burnt sienna. I'm using that big brush I was showing you, and I've dipped it in my bucket of Gamsol, just Gamsol in this bucket here. And now I'm loading up the brush with this paint, and I'm pulling some of the paint into that Gamsol and mixing those together over here. I want this paint to be very thin and very not very oily. So as I was saying, the most important rule of oil painting is something called fat over lean. You'll hear artists say fat over lean. What does that mean? Well, as I was saying earlier, oil paint is made up of basically oil and pigment particles, powdered color. And the only thing that will cut the oil is the solvent. Now, as that, and the oil is always a drying oil. So linseed oil will dry or cure. And sometimes it's made with other kinds of oil, poppy oil, or walnut oil, or there's all different reasons. A paint manufacturer might use a different oil, but basically it's an oil that dries. So anyway, you always want your painting, as you build up the layers of your painting, to have a higher and higher concentration of oil in it. So that means you have to start with basically very little oil in your very first layer. So that's why this layer here has so much solvent in it. So I just did that. Now I'm going to even out the color. My brush is shedding. That must be newer than I thought. Sometimes new brushes aren't so nice. It's sometimes the old ones that have been broken in that are much nicer of a brush. So anyway, that it will get us started. So before I get going, I need to have at least some idea and some direction of which way I'm headed. So I just loaded up this medium-sized brush with some more of that burnt sienna color, and I'm just going to like sketch in a horizon line and some idea of something that I want to do. I don't know. You always want to stay away from the middle, of course, so let's just put something in there. I don't know what I want to do. Maybe a tree right here. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, that is what this will be about. A landscape painting with one tree off center, not and your horizon line below half and this over from half. So let's see how this goes. Now we're just going to quick mix up some color. Now if you look at a sky, any old average sky, you'll notice that it's much more brilliant at the top, and as you get closer to the horizon line, it becomes more muted, lighter in color, and more neutralized. The reason is that you're looking through much more atmosphere. The plants are releasing their oxygen, oxygen into the air. The dust is blowing up. There's particles, the water is evaporating. There's all kinds of particles that you have to look through when you get closer to the horizon line. When you have up in the atmosphere, you look straight up ahead, you'll see a more brilliant blue. So that's that's usually what happens, at least around my area of where I live. So you want to paint to nature and what you see. If that's your goal, then you want to notice these kinds of things. So hang on, I'm going to mix up some sky color on my palette, and it'll go from a brighter blue to a more neutralized blue by the all right, we've got some color mixed up, got my brush loaded. Now we're just going right over what we painted earlier. Yes, it's pulling up a little bit, and it's muddying up my blue, but I'm okay with that if you are. Now, what you do by the tree is up to you. Some people carefully go around the tree, like this, or you can go right through it and then repaint. I think in this case, I'm just going to go right through and repaint. So I'm loading up my brush. I am using medium in this case because I didn't mix a lot of paint, so I want it to go on rather thin. So it's pretty oily. It has a little oil in it in this layer. Now, without cleaning my brush, I'm going to make one step down in color. In value. Maybe it's a personal preference thing, but I don't like these sections to be all one size. Looks a little too stripey for me. And I'm going to go to the next level color again without cleaning the brush. And then finally that orangey level that I was telling you about, that kind of like orangey blue. Let me show you. It's kind of like white, orange, blue. But this you're going to want to get all the way down to the horizon line, wherever that is. Now I know this looks streaky, but you have complete control over that. So you can make it however you want. If you want a nice smooth, everything smooth, oh shoot, I didn't clean this brush. Oh darn it. If you want everything smooth, you'll want to use soft bristles like this if it was clean. Oopsies. This is a bristle brush, so I don't know if you can see it there, but this has hog's hair, so it's a more it'll leave streaks behind, which sometimes I like it. This is a synthetic bristle, and so this will leave it very smooth. Even though this brush is dirty, you'll kind of see what I mean. It's more smooth, but it's dirty, so I guess it's not gonna do what I want it to do. Shame on me for not cleaning my brush. Here is a fan brush. You can buy fan brushes, and if you want it super smooth, you can do fanning, which is I got this a little too medium. So right now what the canvas is telling me, these streakies are saying that I have a little too much medium in here. There isn't a whole lot of pigment load for it to lay nice. So that is never a good sign, because that means again, you want to be fat over lean, and it's telling me I got too fat too fast. So here's something we can do. We can just wipe off and start again. Another thing is to let it dry, put in a second layer of the same level of fat in it, and then that second layer will fill in all the cracks. But since this is a tutorial, I want to show you what to do right away. I'm like, speedy, let's just get it done. So I'm just gonna wipe it off, and you'll see how oil painting is very forgiving. If you make a mistake, it's really not the end of the world. All you lost was that moment, that amount of time, which, yeah, that sucks, but you want to get it right. So that'll be good. So we'll go back in and we'll put in those colors again, only this time not quite so much medium, just mostly color I'm gonna do. There is a little bit of medium here on my palette. That just means if your brush starts leaving a color that you used a little bit ago, that means it's too empty of paint, and you need to load more paint on your brush, because it's used up the top layer of paint and now it's down into the bristles. It's pulling that out from in the middle. So there's our sky. It's gradated down from bright to more neutralized and lighter. The land is also going through that same process of looking through more atmosphere as it goes into the distance. Like this part of the sky is now also, that's the same air that you're seeing this part of the distance right at the horizon line. You're seeing that through this kind of air. And as you get close to your eye, you see through less atmosphere. And so things up close to you are going to be bright and vivid, and you know, the shadows are going to be darker and the lights are going to be lighter. Whereas as you get further back, all of that gets closer and closer to the sky color, actually, because you're looking through the sky to see that. I know it ends so quickly, sorry. The rest of it is continued in part 2. Check it out. Thanks for watching this video, and you can check out my work on terrysalgado.com.